15 spine-chilling true stories exposed, disturbing secrets from the haunted depths of Reddit. As Karen lay in bed, the weight of the day pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. She felt trapped in a mundane cycle of exhausting days and sleepless nights. As the clock ticked past midnight, she couldn't sleep, so she scrolled through her phone, searching for distraction. That's when she stumbled upon a thread, True Stories from My Suburb. It promised horror right around the corner. What she read next chilled her to the bone: disappearances, neighbors gone without a trace, strange noises in the night. Eager to dive in, her heart raced with both curiosity and dread. Every account reeled her in people she thought she knew had terrifying secrets they kept locked behind closed doors. One story told of a family whose child wandered into the woods, only to re-emerge without memory, eyes hollow. Another recounted shadows flickering through windows of the seemingly quiet homes. Goosebumps crept along her skin as she scrolled, unable to tear her gaze away. The next morning, her son Jake came home, and something felt off. He used to buzz with excitement after playing outside, but now he was silent, almost ghostly. She thought back to the posts she'd read. Mr. Thompson, their elderly neighbor, had given him candy. Instinct screamed at her, she couldn't shrug it off. Just yesterday, he'd found Joy kicking a soccer ball in the yard. Today, the joy was absent. Karen's heart pounded as she walked next door. She knocked, her hands trembling. Mr. Thompson answered, his smile casual but his eyes darting those instincts ignited. "Just checking in," she said, forcing a smile. "Jake mentioned you shared some candy." He chuckled, but it was hollow, an echo that made her stomach churn. Paranoia dangled in the air around them, thick and choking. She retreated hastily, the warmth of her home offering little comfort. Were they living in a haven, or were secrets festering beneath the surface? As the sun dipped, shadows crept in, drawing long fingers across her yard. Outside, figures darted. Hushed whispers and laughter broke the stillness, sending shivers racing down her spine. She turned to Jake and Emily, who were busy building a fortress out of kitchen chairs. They were safe inside, but for how long? Her phone beeped with news that sent ice plunging into her veins. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Suddenly, the tranquility shattered. An unmarked van rolled up to the house across the street. Karen's heart skipped as she stared intently. In the shadows, flickers of metal caught her gaze. A knife. Panic surged through her. Was this the folklore she had grown up with? Was a dark spirit coming for her children? She tiptoed closer to the window, holding her breath. The familiar wall of normalcy collapsed around her. Just then, a light flicked on in Mr. Thompson's house, illuminating something in the distance. Fear knotted her stomach, her resolve hardened. She had to uncover the layers of deceit, to protect Jake and Emily. Darkness stood outside her door, creeping closer and swallowing all hope. Her hand brushed the doorknob as she heard the knock, cold, authoritative. A chill spread through the house. Who, or what, was waiting on the other side? The knock reverberated through the house, echoing in the silence like thunder. Karen hesitated, her heart hammering against her chest. The color drained from her face as the knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. She could feel the shadows pressing in, inching forward under the door, igniting a fight-or-flight response deep within her. With trembling hands, she slowly turned the knob, her mind racing. What if it was the police? What if it was a neighbor needing help? Or perhaps, something far worse. Stepping back, she cracked the door open just enough to peer through. Darkness enveloped the porch, the moonlight barely illuminating the figure standing outside. His silhouette was broad and menacing, and for a moment, she thought it could be a trick of her mind, just a darkness creeping under the street lamps. But then he stepped into the light, and her blood ran cold. Damar Thompson stood there, his features obscured by shadow but unmistakably him. But he no longer wore that casual smile. His eyes were wide, frantic, searching. "Karen. You have to listen to me." His voice trembled, breaking her sense of reality. "What's wrong?" She opened the door a fraction wider, her instincts telling her to slam it shut. The panicked look on his face held her there, rooted. "It's Jake. I've seen him playing with them." The words dripped with urgency, each syllable weighed down by unspeakable dread. "You need to get him inside, away from them." "Who? Who is he with?" "Children, not just kids. You have to trust me. They're not like us." He glanced behind him, anxiety ebbing from him in waves. "Get him inside, and don't let him." Before he could finish, a sudden noise echoed from the darkness behind him. A cacophony of laughter broke the silence, sharp and cold. It made Karen's skin crawl. Shadows danced along the street, childlike figures, darting in and out of the light like flickering flames. Their laughter morphed into haunting whispers, chilling her more than the fall air ever could. Her instincts screamed for her to close the door, to barricade herself and her children from whatever horror was unfolding outside. But Mr. Thompson stepped closer, his eyes darting with terror. "You let them in, you can't let them out." Heart racing, she finally pulled the door shut, locking it. The weight of the decision flooded her with urgency but didn't offer security. She turned toward the living room, dread settling in her belly like a stone. "Jake!" she called, panic rising as she rushed toward the chair fortress, anxiety swelling at the thought of her son. She reached the living room just as Emily glanced up, confusion in the young girl's eyes. "Mom, where's Jake?" A nauseating wave of despair washed over her. He should have been right there, building his fort. But the realization struck like lightning: there was calm where chaos should have been. "Jake!" Karen's voice sliced through the stillness, growing more frantic. "Over here." A voice called from the kitchen, and relief flooded her for a moment. But that voice was different, too bright, too eager. How had he gotten there? Confusion set in as she spun towards the sound. The kitchen door swung gently on its hinges, and she stepped through to see him, knees bent with excitement, standing before the unmarked van. Two shadowy figures loomed next to it, whispering urgently as if summoning something dark and dreadful. "Jake, no." She lunged forward, but it felt like wading through molasses as panic weighed her down. She could almost taste the dread in her mouth. As he turned to her, a strange gleam flickered in his eyes, something unrecognizable. "Mom, they said I could come play." A chill shot down her spine. With horror, she realized he had lost that familiar joy, replaced with an unsettling calm of the unknown. She needed to get him back before he slipped away completely, and as she launched herself toward her son, one thought echoed in her mind: what if this was just the beginning? Behind her, the unmarked van's door swung open, spilling icy shadows into the kitchen. Karen's fingers tightened around the doorframe, a split second before she dashed toward Jake. Each step felt like running through thick mud, the air around her heavy and filled with an unshakable dread. The figures beside the van shifted like smoke, their indistinct forms swirling, beckoning him in a language she couldn't understand. "Jake! Come back!" Panic bubbled to the surface. She could feel her chest tightening, each breath like a gasp for air. Time felt distorted, seconds stretching into eternity. "No. They said I could play." Jake's voice rang out, but it wasn't the sweet sound she cherished. It was something else, mechanical, devoid of the innocence that had always been there. The laughter from outside twisted into something sinister, merging with the shadows as if the very air screamed in warning. "Jake, listen to me." Karen's voice pierced through the growing whirlpool of terror around them. "We need to go back inside, now." Just then, one of the shadowy figures lunged forward, moving quicker than thought, slipping into the kitchen like a wraith. With heart-stopping speed, it reached for her son. Instincts kicked in, a primal fear ignited within her. She felt the world around her blur, the scream bubbling in her throat piercing the silence as she lunged for Jake. But she wasn't quick enough. The figure's icy fingers grazed Jake's shoulder, and an unsettling calm washed over him in that instant. He looked up at it with a vacant smile, unblinking. "Mom, they're my friends." She tore through the distance, the floorboards creaking under her frantic weight. Her mind raced. They were children, or at least, they looked like them. But there was something off, something not right behind those innocent faces. "Run!" she shouted, yanking at her son, pulling him hard against her. To her horror, he didn't budge, his small frame resolute, rooted in the earth. "Let me go, Mom. I want to play." The gleam in his eyes deepened, a bright, unnatural glow that twisted her heart into knots. No, this wasn't Jake. Not anymore. The shadows in the van appeared to pulsate, laughter echoing against the cold kitchen walls. Suddenly, as if answering a dark command, the air grew thick and humid, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. The second shadow joined the first, closing in, whispering secrets that slithered into her ears, words she couldn't quite catch, yet felt crawling up and down her spine. Behind her, Emily's small voice trembled, "Mom, I'm scared." Karen twisted back to see her daughter standing in the doorway, the light casting an eerie glow around her. "Get away from there, sweetie. Come here." But even as she cried out, she could tell Emily hesitated, curiosity weighing against her fear. The figures began to flicker in and out of sight. Shadows defined by their jawless grins, inching closer into the light. Just one touch, one caress, and everything could change. "No." The word erupted from her lips, primal, filled with unrelenting fear. She shoved her body hard against Jake, forcing him back, the weight of something unseen pushing against her, making it harder to breathe. The laughter screamed, echoing, and it felt as if the walls themselves were laughing too, mocking her struggle. The door swung open wider, as if inviting her nearer to the heart of the nightmare unfolding. "Come play with us," the voices intoned, chilling and enthralling. "Jake, focus on my voice." She could feel panic consuming her, sinking like quicksand. How do you fight against something like this? There wasn't just a danger outside. No, it dwelled in her own house, in her own children. Suddenly, the lights flickered, the shadows pulsing with energy, and Jake's eyes widened. His own body seemed to tremble at the sound of the laughter, a familiar sound turned twisted. "Mom!" His voice wavered, the warmth slipping away. They're getting mad. In that moment, she understood. This wasn't just a game. It was a battle for her son, and she'd just lost the first round. As the shadows engulfed the kitchen, creeping forward and whispering secrets meant to lure her in, Karen felt her grip on reality shatter. She had to find a way to bring Jake back. But how do you pull someone from the abyss when the abyss wants them more than you do? And just outside, the laughter turned into a roar, an echo that promised one final question: what if the darkness had already taken him? Karen's heart raced as the shadows closed in, their fingers stretching toward Jake like claws ready to snatch his very essence. Instinct demanded she fight, but every shuddering breath made her feel weaker, suffocated by an unseen force that constricted her throat. She had to act. "Jake! Look at me!" she cried, searching his glazed eyes for any sign of recognition, any hint of the boy she raised instead of the empty shell before her. But he simply blinked, and those joyful sparkles were gone, replaced by an ominous void. The figures pulsed with light, intensifying their chant. "Come play forever." The whispers slithered through the air, wrapping around Karen's heart, easing fear into something more sinister, more welcoming. They coaxed not only Jake but the very air around her, beckoning her closer. "No." With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she lunged forward, but it felt like pushing against concrete. Each step forward brought her backward, the whispers weaving into her thoughts, trying to drown out her will. "Mom!" Emily whimpered again, barely audible against the maelstrom, yet it cut through the darkness. Karen twisted back to find her daughter still standing in the doorway, eyes wide with terror, clutching the frame as if it were her only anchor. "Emily, stay back. Please." But as she yelled the warning, the laughter swelled, transforming into an unbearable cacophony. Each taunting sound curled into her thoughts, pulling her toward the light. It shimmered, promising something so enticing that her resolve trembled. Without warning, the shadows surged forward. Karen's body instinctively shielded Jake, but the dark forces slipped around her, whispering threats that intertwined with her desperate thoughts. "You belong with us, don't you see? They can't save you away from him." She screamed, forcing herself to push against the pull, but Jake staggered toward the shadows. He blinked again, and for just a split second, his own voice broke through the overwhelming darkness. "Mom, help me!" In an instant, everything shifted. The kitchen lights flickered violently, plunging the room into a brief darkness that felt alive, breathing with malice. She used that moment to grip Jake's arm, tearing him from the clutches of the shadows. "Come on, we need to move," she shouted, pulling him back hard against her. But he struggled against her grip, shaking his head in defiance. The shadows pulsed, forming waves of laughter that enveloped him, echoing through the walls as if mocking her. "Why can't you understand? They're my friends." The words shattered her heart. Just then, the door slammed shut, rattling the frame, severing her one escape route. Panic surged in her veins like fire. "Emily, run!" She felt the urgency to protect not only Jake but also her daughter. The shadows blurred around her, shifting to surround Emily in a tightening net. "Mom!" Emily cried out, her small face contorted in terror while the edges of darkness coiled around her toes. Time was slipping. "Let her go, you bastards!" Karen's voice rose, fierce with rage. She yanked Jake back to her, but something in the figure's hollow eyes hardened. They were no longer just playful shadows. They were predators. The kitchen walls thrumming with eerie energy. "Stay with us." Join the game. They offered tantalizing energy, but Karen only felt the growing despair. The thought echoed in her mind, hadn't she already lost him once? "Please. I'll do anything," she shouted, the words spilling out in desperation, a final plea woven with maternal strength. But just then, a high-pitched sound screeched through the laughter, a sound she'd never heard before. A signal? A warning? She could feel the shadows halting, shivering, and watching. With each pulse, she sensed something new, a deeper hunger, a shadow hungrier than before, as if something even darker had awakened, something they feared. And before she could react, the whispers transformed, merging into one voice that sent chills down her spine. "Playtime is over." Could it be? Had they pushed too far? And just like that, the shadows swirled back, retreating into an unnatural stillness. Moments passed, dread thick in the air, her heart pounding against the silence. But out of darkness came a flicker, a glint of hope. "Jake!" she gasped, staring down at her son, who suddenly gripped her hand with his tiny, trembling fingers. But as she looked, fear twisted through her chest. Behind her son stood a shadow far larger and darker than the rest, and inched toward them. What had the darkness awakened? Before she could even think of running, it whispered softly, "He's ours now." The air thickened, heavy with dread. The shadow loomed behind Jake, its form swirling like a dark mist, features indistinct but exuding an icy presence that chilled Karen to her core. She felt Jake clutch her tighter, and she held him desperately, drawing strength from his small warmth. "Run, Karen! Get Emily!" The voice broke through the stillness. It was strong, resolute, but distant. It was the last thing she expected to hear, the familiar twang of her husband, Dave. Dave? She dared not look away from the shadow. It stirred, a gravelly chuckle reverberating through the kitchen. "Don't look at him!" Dave shouted again, more urgency lacing his words. "It wants to trap you. Protect the kids." The reality hit her like an icy wave. She couldn't yield, she couldn't lose Jake too. With renewed fear-fueled determination, she began to inch backward, pulling Jake with her. The shadows hissed, the cacophony of whispers swirling and coiling around her, each syllable a dagger aimed at her resolve. "Join us, it'll be so much easier here," they crooned, soft and inviting, a voice that slithered into her mind. She nearly stumbled at the weight of their allure, gripping Jake's hand tighter, pushing against the voices clawing at her sanity. "Emily! Where are you?" Karen screamed, her own voice raw, breaking through the noise. She had to focus, had to find her child. With every heartbeat, her anxiety grew, she could feel the silence in the kitchen weighing heavily upon her. "Mom!" Emily's voice trembled from the shadows, quivering with fear. Karen's heart seized. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." She could only hope that her daughter understood. The shadow forming behind Jake seemed to pulsate, driven by some malevolent amusement, drawn closer by her panic. "Bring her, Karen." Dave's voice urged, desperation inching through his tone. She didn't want to, but she turned to face the darkness. The sight of Emily was barely visible, her small outline barely discernible, lost within the haze. "Emily! Listen to me." She had no choice. Tightening her grip on Jake, she summoned her courage and dashed toward her daughter. The whispers rose around them, a wave of noise that made her think she could drown in it. "Mom!" Emily cried, the frantic edge evident in her voice as she clutched the doorframe. "Grab my hand." Karen reached, her heart pounding, the shadows flickering as if sensing this moment of connection. Emily extended her small arm, fingers poised to break the barrier of fear holding her back. They met, fingers intertwining, but then, a thunderous roar erupted through the room. The shadow cracked, sending a ripple of force that knocked them all back. Jake tumbled, and Karen lost grip, spiraling to the ground as the shadow engulfed him, its hungry void swallowing her son whole. "No! No! No!" Panic rushed through her veins, a current of raw terror surging as she clawed her way back to Jake. In that moment, the laughter shifted, growing twisted. The way the darkness twisted and coiled around her son felt sickening, her heart thrumming in response. "Join us," it whispered, now more seductive than ever, thrumming with an anticipation that made her stomach churn. "He can play, forever just like you wanted." Their words wrapped around her like chains, but somewhere beneath the voices, she felt at the fraying threads of a connection, the flicker of hope igniting against her despair. With a roar of defiance, she threw herself toward Jake, reaching for him even as the shadows seemed to pull him further away. "Jake! Fight! Fight for me!" She screamed, and she felt him falter, just for a moment the strength of her voice holding him back. But then, something else stirred in the shadow, something far more sinister. The shadow solidified, taking form until it became grotesque, its gaping maw widening hungrily. "You're too late," it hissed, raw malice scorched through its tone as it reached for her, and then she saw it, lurking on the edges of the darkness, a flicker of light, a figure emerging from the depths, someone she thought long gone. "What are you doing here?" It was Dave, his face twisted in a mix of anger and fear mingling with steadfast determination. "You're dead." Karen gasped, the revelation blurring her desperation. "Maybe not for long." He shouted, launching himself toward the shadow, the energy in the air pulsed, shaking the walls. As he collided, a blast of light erupted, momentarily pushing back the darkness. In that instant, she could see Jake's eyes, his fear now palpable, shimmering in the spaces between the light and the shadow, but would they all escape? The eruption faded, and the shadows sputtered at the edges, unsure. The struggle was far from over. "Hold on!" Karen yelled, fear and determination intertwining. The fight wasn't just for survival. It was for their family, and for the truth that had been locked in darkness for far too long. As Dave wrestled with the monstrous entity before him, something shifted. The shadows receded, but a new surge of darkness brooded in the corners, gathering like a storm, with uncertainty gnawing at her. Karen realized it wouldn't end here. "Let us go." she yelled, pulling Jake up toward the light as Dave charged fiercely against the shadow. But was it too late? What will happen to us now? Jake questioned, fear evident in his voice. I don't know, but we have to keep fighting. And at that moment, the shadows screamed a cold response that echoed throughout the kitchen. You can never escape. The threat hung ominously in the air. Was hope still within reach, or would the darkness claim them all? The light flickered, casting wild shadows on the walls, each pulse revealing nightmarish shapes that threatened to emerge from the corners. Karen's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through her as she grabbed Jake's hand, pulling him forward with all her strength. Every instinct screamed to move, to escape while they could. Dave, keep it busy, she implored, her voice a mix of fear and purpose, abandoning her disbelief. The dark visage writhed, shadows sputtering from Dave's confrontation, but the entity did not seem hindered at all. Go. Now. He shouted, wrestling against something unseen, fists striking with frantic energy. The flash of light seemed to push Jake backward, making him cry out in confusion and terror, but Karen held on. The warmth of her son's grasp anchored her. I'm not leaving you. She yelled into the roar, knowing the swirling darkness could easily close in around them again. With each step, the cacophony intensified, whispers clawing at the edges of her mind, murmuring her deepest fears. It's easier down here. Join us. Each syllable slithered down her spine like icy snakes, attempting to find a crack in her will. Mom, what's happening? Jake's small, trembling voice cut through the noise, grounding her in the chaos. Just hold on. Karen felt another surge of defiance, her breath heavy as she forced herself to peer forward. We have to get out. We have to find Emily. The kitchen seemed to warp, shadows elongating into grotesque figures that danced menacingly at the edges of perception. Each flicker of light seemed like a heartbeat, pushing against the heavy darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, she noticed the figure of Emily, still huddled by the doorway, fear etched deeply into her small face. Mom! It won't let me go. The cry sliced through the din, shattering a fragile thread of hope. Emily! Karen screamed, her voice raw with panic. You have to run to us. But the shadows rippled, ominously thickening, swirling around Emily like a predator closing in. No. Come back. Karen was rooted in place, heels digging in as if the earth itself conspired against her movement. I can't. Emily's voice trembled as if the shadow had a grip on her heart. Fight it, Emily. It's all in your head. Karen yelled, desperation crashing through her like a tidal wave. With a powerful burst, Dave stumbled back, a grimace etched on his face as he bore the weight of his struggle against the dark mass, forcing back against an unseen force with sheer will. Get to her. He gasped, sweat glistening on his brow as the entity writhed and shrieked in anger. The light flickered again, casting grotesque silhouettes that twisted and turned, distorting the room further. The air was electric with a kind of chaotic energy that made everything feel like it was teetering on a razor's edge. Karen felt the pull of the darkness, seductive and chilling, whispering promises of peace and release. It wanted her to surrender. Mom! Jake's small body trembled against her, reminding her of what mattered. Help Emily. Jake, we can't. We have to get out. But she felt the shadow shift. Dave was losing ground. Together. It resonated through her like a war cry. We do this together. With renewed determination, Karen took a step back. On 3, we run. Mom, Jake started, fear gripping him tighter than any shadow could. Trust me. 1, 2, 3. They surged forward, adrenaline igniting their limbs. As they ran, the shadows hissed loudly, outrage emanating from the swirling dark mass as they broke free from its grip. Emily, now! Karen cried, just as the shadows lunged, sweeping dangerously close, but she felt something, a warmth coming from her children, a tether pulling them closer together. As they reached the doorway, a piercing scream erupted, the shadow exploding in rage. The room shook violently, and the lights flickered in a desperate struggle against the encroaching darkness that in that moment of chaotic flight, something dreadful emerged from deeper within the shadows, an unholy visage, eyes glowing with hunger, twisting into a nightmarish grin. "You think you can leave?" it roared, its voice sending tremors through their bodies. The light dimmed further, and Karen felt the panic rise again. "We have to hold on." But would the tether between them be enough? Would light prevail over dark? Time stood still. In the doorway, a shadow lunged toward them, and Karen braced herself, ready to fight for no matter what came next. Why couldn't it be over yet? What more were they going to face? "Who are you?" A new voice echoed from the depths, chilling the air. And as the shadows swirled, she felt the truth unraveling around her, ready to expose the darkest secret hidden within. What had she summoned back to them? "Get out!" Karen screamed, the weight of the world pressing down as the sentence echoed in the room, reverberating against the walls drenched in shadows. She yanked Jake and Emily forward, their little bodies stumbling over each other in the disorienting chaos. As they made a break for the door, the darkness hissed around them, a menacing whisper that curled into their ears like smoke, promising despair. They barreled past the kitchen table, each step echoing like a warped drumbeat in her ears. Suddenly, Dave collapsed to one knee, gasping for air, struggle splintering his features. "Hold on. I'm coming." But the darkness lunged. Tendrils shot out, snaring at his limbs with cold, frosted fingers. Karen's heart seized as she turned back, feeling the darkness claw at her instincts, urging her to stay, to abandon her children and surrender to the chaos. "No. Mom, we can't leave him." Jake's voice trembled, a mix of loyalty and terror. His innocent plea twisted like a dagger through her chest. "This isn't a choice." She shot back, panic quickening her pulse. "We need to get out now." But as she pulled on Jake, forcing them towards the light outside, Emily whimpered, "What if he doesn't make it?" The screams intensified, coursing through the air, an unsettling symphony of dread. Shadows crept along the walls, no longer bound to their corners, stretching and contorting as if alive. Each flicker of light revealed grotesque faces twisting in agony, mouths opening to scream, to laugh, to beckon them back. "Together!" Karen shouted, feeling the burning desperation in her chest. "We can't leave him." They were rooted, three figures swaying on the brink, tethered by fear and loyalty as the darkness surged. Dave's back arched painfully as he fought back, a form of twisted defiance, but she could see it, the drain, the exhaustion. The entity was relentless. "Fight it. Fight back." Dave bellowed, trembling arms outstretched. His plea only angered the shadows more. Karen stepped back, taking in the torment around them. The truths would spill out, she could feel it. A low growl resonated from the darkness, mixing eerily with the fading shouts of their struggle. "You can have him," it hissed, voice echoing with 1,000 tormented souls. "Join us, and you can be free." "Mom! Please!" Jake cried, tears streaming down his porcelain face. His small hand was ice against her skin. "Don't listen to it," she yelled, clenching her jaw, forcing bravery through her shaking body. "We can make it, keep moving." But as they turned to the doorway, the dark mass writhed like a wounded beast, tendrils snaking forward, threatening to ensnare them. The air grew thick, suffocating. A flood of whispers swirled, taunting, pulling at their skin, threatening to steep them in dread. "Who are you?" Emily suddenly called into the void, voice small yet tremoring with defiance. Silence followed, stretching painfully long before a laughter erupted, harsh and guttural. It seemed to echo from all directions, each note a wave crashing against them. "I am your fears, your doubts, those you have cast aside." As the shadows recoiled, Karen felt an abyss open within her chest, memories swimming to the surface, freak accidents, lost opportunities, faces of friends and loved ones left behind. "Mom!" Jake's grip tightened, yanking her back to the moment. "Go. Dave urged, mustering every ounce of strength, face contorted in pain and anguish. No. Karen shouted, veins racing with fury. We're not leaving you. The shadows surged. A violent wave crashed over them, darkness spilling into the light with chilling ease. Karen gasped, her breath caught in a vice. Then, just as suddenly, a roar erupted as the shadows lunged, and against all odds, light erupted from within Karen, blinding, a stark explosion against the depths of despair. What is happening? Emily shouted, overwhelmed by blinding brilliance. Karen didn't know. She felt the warmth flood around her, and like a wild dream, they were all suspended in that radiant glow, floating above the chaos. But an ominous rumble built beneath them, threatening to collapse the dimensions of this fragile light. You can't escape. The dark voice shrieked. Can we? Karen thought, heart pounding, as the darkness clawed at its sides, desperate to breach the illumination. With every ounce of strength left, she clutched her children tight. Stay close. But in the back of her mind, an unmistakable question lingered, weaving a tapestry of dread. What if the light was merely another trick? From the depths of the shadows, a haunting figure emerged, cloaked and menacing, slowly unrolling its tale of terror as it hissed like steam from a kettle. This isn't over, and with that, everything went dark. The sensation of weightlessness shattered as the light vanished, replacing its warmth with a biting chill. Karen felt her body slam against a hard surface like a crash landing. Dazed, she blinked, trying to focus through the fog of confusion. Sharp, biting cold seeped into her bones, and instinctively, she curled around her children, protective. We're still together, she whispered, though her heart thudded with dread. Emerging from the dim light, she saw the room morph into a twisted reflection of their own home. The kitchen table stood solidly, yet it was marred with dark stains, as if dipped in shadows, swirling in impossible patterns. It shouldn't have been like this. Where was the radiant glow that protected them? Mom. Jake's frail voice quivered. What happened? She didn't know. Her breath quickened, pulse racing with terror. I don't know, she admitted, scrambling to her feet, her eyes roaming wildly, searching for Dave. We have to find Dad. Just then, a piercing scream echoed through the house, taunting and full of rage, a voice that was both familiar and distorted. Karen! Help! It was Dave. His cries sliced through the oppressive aura like glass shattering. The shadows, still looming, tugged at her mind, snaking around her thoughts, pulling her backwards into her worst fears. The awareness of what waited in the darkness clawed at her. No. We won't fall for you. She steadied herself, forcing her gaze back to her children. Stay close. We stick together. They crept toward the door leading to the hall, each step heavy with uncertainty. The house felt alive. Conversations flitted through the air, murmurs too low to grasp, toxic whispers crawling under their skin. Turn back, it's not safe. Mom, Emily whimpered, fear painting her small face. Mommy, I want to go home. Jake echoed, panic exploding in his eyes. Just trust me. She clenched her fists, pushing forward. But doubt marinated in her thoughts as they approached the door. What if there was no escape? At that moment, Dave's voice pierced through the din, frantic. Get to the basement. Now. The urgency burned through her. We have to listen to him. One last surge of adrenaline propelled them into the hall, the oppressive darkness swirling, twisting like live wires. They were mere footsteps from the basement door when the ground jolted underfoot, and a shriek erupted from the shadows. Tendrils shot from the floor, snaring at their ankles, icy fingers of despair. No. Not now. She shouted, yanking her children back, but the darkness was relentless. Gripping the doorknob proved futile as a wave of cold crashed into her, nearly knocking her off her feet. Hold on. Don't let go. Jake shouted, clutching her shirt. With a defiant roar, Karen swung the door open, but a flap of darkness engulfed them, pulling painfully as she wrestled for control. The basement loomed a dark maw, threatening to swallow them whole. Karen had no idea what was down there, just an unfathomable promise of danger. "Get in," she ordered, thrusting her children into the shadowed space before her. She followed, the world above slipping away as she fell into the abyss. The dark solidarity of the basement held an unsettling silence. After a moment, she caught her breath, glancing around. Their faint breaths echoed, exaggerated in the gloom. Old boxes lined the walls, dusty and forgotten, and a damp smell hung in the air, a rancid blend of decay and despair. "Where's Dad?" Emily asked, her voice a fragile thread in the oppressive darkness. "Stay quiet," Karen hissed, instincts bristling. The chill deepened, shadows creeping toward them once more, an ominous presence that thirsted for their fear. "Together." She rallied, though her heart pounded with uncertainty. Yet, the stillness was shattered again, this time by a pattern of footsteps, deliberate and slow, echoing from above. "Karen." It was Dave's voice, faint yet growing closer, scratching at her containment. "Dad!" Jake shouted, but Karen clamped a hand over his mouth, her eyes wide with dread. Above them, something heavy shifted, the thud like an approaching storm. The fear etched on her children's faces compelled her to think, to act. This might be their last chance. "What do we do?" Emily's gaze darted around, trembling. Karen felt a shiver crawl up her spine. They had to confront the darkness, but what waited for them if they did? She could feel the air thickening, shadows creeping closer, each passing second wrapping around her tighter. "Let us find him," Karen declared, bolstered by a flicker of hope. But in that uncertain moment, she knew the question that loomed over them: would they be able to help him, or would they all fall deeper into the encroaching void? As the footsteps came closer, a deep, rasping voice broke free from the darkness. "It's your choice now." And with that chilling pronouncement, the shadows surged, swallowing their hope whole. The silence in the basement felt like a thick fog, smothering any optimism Karen clung to. The shadows writhed around them, breathing, alive with a sinister energy that gnawed at her resolve. Her heart raced, thumping harder with every thud that echoed from above, each sound drawing closer, more assured. "No!" she hissed, voices crashing in her mind, both her own instincts and her children's pleas. "No, we're not giving in." Emily's small fingers trembled in her grip, while Jake's wide eyes searched the corners of the basement, darting to shadows that suddenly felt thicker than before. "Mommy, please," he whimpered, barely above a whisper. "Shoo." Karen squeezed Jake's shoulders, forcing herself to be calm. "We have to be brave." But the floor beneath them trembled slightly, not from an earthquake but from something far worse. The sound of footsteps stopped, hanging in the air, as if the person above was waiting, listening. Holding their breath. The anticipation clawed at Karen's sanity, testing her will. "Don't let the darkness get to you," she murmured, drawing her children close. "We'll get out of here. Just focus on me." Mom Emily's voice trailed off, her gaze fixed on a spot behind one of the old boxes, the flicker of something slithering. A shiver coursed down Karen's spine. "It's just shadows," she forced out, though doubt bubbled up. "Those are shadows." Another faint echo of her husband's voice, now almost a mockery. "Karen, come to me." It twisted around them like a sinister lullaby, both soothing and terrifying. "No." A surge of defiance erupted within her, banishing the fear that threatened to engulf her. "We have to move." Gripping Jake's hand tight, she peered into the dark, where several paths diverged among the maze of boxes. The room felt enormous, yet suffocating, cloaked in suffocating blackness. There was no telling what might be lurking just out of sight. "Which way?" she asked, doubt creeping in as she struggled to lead. A sinister whisper brushed against her ear, not of the wind but a voice, deeper, crawling under her skin. This way. Her throat tightened, but she knew they had to act. "Right, we go right," she blurted, steering her children as she glided between the boxes. Each footstep was careful, the fear palpable, every breath in sync with their shared dread. The air felt charged heavy with the scent of mildew coated with something bitter and metallic. It was suffocating. And when she felt a flicker of something rushing past her leg, she stifled a scream, pulling her children even closer. A loud crash erupted from above. Wood splintered, something heavy fell, shaking the very foundation of the house. "Run! Move!" she gasped, pushing them onward. As they neared the far wall, she could feel the weight of shadowy tendrils gripped around her, like chains trying to drag her back into despair. The whispers escalated, clamoring for her attention, begging her to turn back, promising a respite she knew would be a lie. "Mommy, I'm scared," Jake cried, the tremor in his voice like ice climbing through her. "Stay with me," she urged, her grip tightening, knuckles white as they swung around a corner. The walls closed in, distorting what little light filtered into the basement. Then, the whispers snaked around her once more, insisting fervently, "No escape, no escape." "No." She shot back, driven by a primal need to protect her children. "We will escape." Suddenly, a figure loomed in front of them, almost indistinguishable at first, but then it took shape. It was Dave, appearing at the edge of the darkness, his features distorted. "Karen." He reached out, unsteady, shadow-wrapped arms beckoning. "Dad." Jake's voice soared, hope rekindled, but Karen felt the surge of dread wash over her. "Stay back," she shouted, panic clawing her throat. "Make sure they stay close. Don't leave my sight." As she wrestled against the encroaching darkness, something deep within stirred a flicker of realization. They had to make a choice, and each moment spent wading deeper only invited the horrors waiting just beyond the veil. What if the figure was not who he seemed? "Karen. Please." His voice cracked like glass. Shadows peeked behind him, swirling, pulling at his form, threatening to pull him into the nothingness. "It's a trap," Karen shouted. But her own heart waged war against the walls of doubt threatening to expand in her mind. "Mommy!" Emily shrieked, terror rippling through her voice, distracting Karen just long enough to catch the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing right behind her. The shadows closed in, and with one final stifled cry, the air swallowed them whole. "Which way is out?" a dark voice whispered as Karen's vision darkened, her grip slipping from her children's hands, and then silence echoed ominously in the night. What had she chosen? Answers or an abyss? When the darkness lifted, Karen stumbled forward, breathless, heart pounding, the air cold and still. She gasped, scanning the void around her. It was empty. The basement hadn't transformed, but the shadows had stretched away, leaving nothing but a terrible silence. Frantic fear gripped her throat. Where were Jake and Emily? "Jake? Emily?" she cried, her voice trembling, echoing against the barren walls. A sudden warmth ignited in the room, a flicker of light shimmering in the distance, faint but real. She sprinted toward it. Legs moving on instinct, propelled by love and desperation. "This way!" she yelled, hopeful, but the darkness coiled around her body like a vice, chilling her spirit. "Mommy!" A voice pierced through the murk, her pulse quickened. It was Jake. A wave of relief flooded through her, bringing warmth against the cold dread. She raced faster, the light dancing just ahead, a beacon in the suffocating darkness. The light swelled as she ran, illuminating wrinkled walls plastered with memories, as if reminding her of the life she cherished. "Hold on. I'm coming." She tore through remnants of ruin, shadows shrunk into the corners, cowering away from her resolve, but as she approached, the light flickered dangerously, stretching thin, and she spotted them, Jake, Emily, huddled together in the glow. Relief crashed over her in waves as she grabbed their shoulders, pulling them tight against her, feeling their warmth. "I was so scared." Jake's voice quaked, and she sensed the tremors threading through him. "I'm here, sweetie. I'm here," she whispered, desperately trying to stifle her own fear. "All of you thought you could leave." A voice, chilling and taunting, rippled through the air, penetrating their moment of unity. The shadows surged forth, snaking from the walls as the figure materialized, the monstrous embodiment of darkness, grinning with hungry eyes. "No. We are not playing your games anymore," Karen shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins. Heart racing, she squared her shoulders, shielding her children behind her. "You will not take us." The entity laughed, a sound that reverberated through the hollow room. "You think your light can defeat me? I thrive in despair." It stepped forward, tendrils of shadow reaching for her. They crackled with energy, cold as ice, whispering temptations that curled around them. "Join us, it's easier. Even your husband was tempted." Karen's breath caught. "No." She couldn't let doubt seep in. She turned to her kids, the light flickering between them. "We are not afraid. Love is stronger than any darkness." As the creature lunged, something shifted. Energy surged from her chest, enveloping them, spiraling upward. The shadows faltered, recoiling as the light blazed in response to her declaration. It brightened with every heartbeat, each pulse radiating their shared strength. "Together!" she yelled, gripping Jake and Emily tight. "We push it back." The warmth surged from within, guiding but unpredictable, each pulse a rallying cry against the darkness. "No!" The creature roared, thrashing against the tide of light, howling as if splintering under its brilliance. Shadows crushed against the walls, disintegrating around them, twisting into wisps of smoke. "Fight! Everyone, now!" Karen's heart raced as the children nodded, fear replaced by determination. They let their love shine brightly, the essence of who they were, a family. Light expanded, enveloping them completely, erasing the darkness. They felt the shadows retreat, receding into nothingness as the creature shrieked, its form twisting and howling, trapped in a web of despair it had woven. "Together, keep fighting," Karen urged, their voices united, illuminating the confines of their haunted space. With one last scream, the creature disintegrated, evaporating into the ether, the shadows finally dispersing as if they never existed. The basement echoed with their voices, the walls warm once again, shimmering as light enveloped them, and just like that, everything shifted. They were no longer in the basement, but outside, under the soft glow of the stars, safe on the lawn. Sounds of night filled the air, crickets chirping softly, moonlight spilling over their skin. "Mom." Jake's small voice was a whisper, trembling but steady in the calm night. "Did we win?" Karen knelt down, pulling them close. "Yes, my loves. We did. It's over." "We were so scared," Emily murmured, snuggling into her side. "I know. I was scared too. But our love was stronger than the darkness. We can face anything together," Karen replied, tears streaming down her cheeks, relief flooding her heart. Their home stood before them, serene and still, a haven once more. They faced unimaginable fear and come out the other side, a family bound by an unbreakable light. As dawn began to break, Karen held her children close. "Let us go inside. It's time for a new beginning." That night was a dark chapter in their lives, but as the sun rose, Karen sensed the weight of what they'd overcome. They had emerged from the depths of despair, forever changed but stronger together, and in the depths of her heart, she knew that light can triumph over even the most haunting shadows, for love is the brightest flame in the darkest night. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel today. Only true fans understand how important this is.